Good evening, all. How are you? My name is Alam Barrett, a member of the Black Resource Network, and
I'm Brendez Wineglass, member of the Black Resource Network.
we are here to interview Tom Suozzi for the. We want to thank you all for. Say hi, Tom.
Hey, everybody. Somebody's coming to say hello also. Hello there.
To the neighborhood.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for making me known to us.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay.
So we want to thank Tom for joining us in the heart of Lawrenceton, and we definitely want to send a shout out to Miss Leah Fontaine of Be in Good Health. Let's just give her a round of applause.
Hey,
Be in Good Health. Leah Fontaine.
Come on, Leah, come on.
And so before we get into the sorry. So as we there we go. Little technical difficulties, but we're okay now. So allow me to paint the picture for the conversation that we're about to have. Once again, Tom, thank you for coming to the heart of Lawrenceton. I'm a homegrown member of Lawrenceton, 30 plus years. I love it here. It's an amazing community.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. And Brendez, thank you so much.
Thank you. And as a neighbor of Rosedale of 32 years, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So allow me to paint this picture really quick. We're currently in the 5th Congressional District. This is a community that has the highest density of Black home ownership, highest union density, but it's also very unique in that this is a place where Black folks have a higher median income than their white counterparts. So, New York suffered the largest population loss of any state in the nation from 2020 to 2021. I think more than a little bit over 320,000 more people left our state in the last decade. So I wanted to know if you could share with us your vision for New York State, and what would you say to a family in Southeast Queens who has been struggling with gas prices, rising food prices, flooding, schools in desperate need of resources, that they should remain in New York State?
So that's a great question, Alan, because I know this neighborhood pretty well. I've been spending a lot of time here. My mother grew up in St. Albans. She went to Andrew Jackson High School.
Oh, wow.
She went to a nursing school in the area as well. It's not there anymore. And I know that Cambria Heights has the highest single-family home ownership anywhere in New York City. That's not just African American. That's single-family home ownership for the whole city of New York.
Correct.
And I did a press conference here probably I don't even know what it is now, maybe September or October, before I decided to run for Congress, about the state and local tax deductions. Because when President Trump was in office, the Republicans capped people's state and local tax deduction at $10,000. Used to be you could deduct your property taxes that you pay and your city and state income taxes that you pay from your federal income. So you didn't have to pay taxes on the taxes you already paid. And that hard hits homeowners in Southeast Queens because they are paying property taxes and they're paying income taxes. And a lot of folks who live here are house rich but income poor because they're senior citizens who bought their houses 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they've lived a good life here. Their house is worth a lot more money than it used to be, but now they're on a fixed income, and it's very hard to pay their property taxes. So one of my big issues I have is to try and help seniors on a fixed income to not have to pay above a certain percentage of their income in property taxes, because property taxes are very regressive. They're not based upon your ability to pay. So you talked about gas prices, you talked about utility rates, all crushing people. We got a problem with utility rates going up. We also have the highest taxes in America. The highest state and local taxes in America are in New York State. And so people just can't take it anymore, and people are leaving. And anybody who's watching this podcast knows somebody that moved to Georgia, moved to North Carolina, moved to South Carolina, moved to Florida, moved to Texas, moved to Arizona, where they're talking about leaving. So in my campaign, I talk about 4 issues of my big priorities. Number 1 is we have to fix the crime problem, because people are afraid to take this up.
We're going to get to that. We got a ton of questions.
That's number 1 for me. Yeah. Number 2 is we have to reduce the taxes and try to address affordability. Number 3 is we have to help the children in our troubled schools, because when kids are abandoned at a young age, they can't possibly make it for the rest of their lives. 75% of the people in jail have a drug, alcohol, or mental health problem. 50% of the people in jail have a learning disability. You look at crime, you look at poverty, you look at homelessness, you look at domestic violence, you look at any societal dysfunction, it comes from young kids not getting the attention they need and the opportunity they need at a young age. So we have to fix that in our schools, and I got a whole plan for that, which we have to talk about. And fourth, we have to go up to the corruption in New York State. New York State's the most corrupt state in the United States of America. That's not me. That's the Washington Post says that. And we've seen governors leaving scandal, previous attorney general, previous controller, FSC, Shelley Silver, Joe Bruno, Dean Skelos, the current, the most recent lieutenant governor, got arrested for bribery and corruption after being in office for 8 months. That's not normal that we got all these people getting in trouble. It's happening all the time. And it's because politicians, elected officials, don't feel accountable to the people.
Right. And I also want to send a shout out to our district leader, Roslyn Spignan, who's here, and shout out to you all
Hey, Roz.
for being involved. The next one that we have is pandemic recovery and whiplash. So New York City's economic recovery.
They want you to talk louder. They give me
Okay. Can you
gotta
guys hear me?
project. You gotta
All right.
project.
So New York City's economic recovery index rose by 2 points for the week ending in June 11th in 2022, reaching a score of 75 out of 100. However, Black businesses have still been struggling here locally in Southeast Queens. So can you share with us your strategy and your plan for the first 90 days on how you will continue to help New York State recover from the pandemic? And can you speak specifically to how you will support and help small Black businesses like this one?
So first, we're not going to recover from the pandemic until we recover from the growing crime problem, because people are afraid to take the subway. People are afraid. That's not necessarily the problem in this neighborhood, but generally, New York City overall, people are afraid to take the subway, and they're not going back to the office. And some people don't, they've gotten accustomed to like working from home and working remotely. Other people are just afraid to, and they're using crime as a reason not to go back to work. So my kids are living in the city. One of them's living in Brooklyn. The other one's living in Manhattan. I get worried whenever I get to take the subway. So it's a problem for everybody. And it's not like some made up, unreasonable fear. Well, we see stories every single day. And statistically, we see that shootings have gone up 100%. Murders have gone up 50%. 91% of New Yorkers statewide, not just New York City, statewide, I think the crime is a serious and very serious problem. As far as local businesses here in Southeast Queens, access to capital is a big issue. I worked very hard as a member of Congress to get money to people, because New York was hit harder than any place else because we got hit with coronavirus before anybody else did. And we didn't know how to treat it. And I talked to my colleagues in Congress, and they're like, what are you going to make such a big deal about that in New York? I said, well, we had a refrigerator trucks full of bodies. What did you have? And so we're still going through post-traumatic stress because of that. So we did a lot of relief programs from Small Business Association, EIDL loans, payroll protection program, but not everybody got it. And a lot of people are still struggling to come back. There's a state senator from this area named James Sanders. He has an idea to create a public bank. I support the idea of a public bank. New York State has a $220 billion budget. We've always got billions of dollars worth of deposits. Let's take a big chunk of that money, literally hundreds of millions, if not billions, put it in a minority-owned bank with a mission that they've got to support Black-owned businesses. They've got to support businesses that want to bid on public contracts. They've got to support Black home ownership. You don't, maybe you do realize how unique this part of the world is.
Correct.
With so much Black home ownership. I'm from Nassau County. We're home to Levittown. Levittown was affordable housing for the returning veterans after World War II. A lot of people bought houses for cheap. Their houses accumulated in value, and they had generational wealth when they passed away to give to their kids. The problem was Black people were frozen out of it. It was redlining. They weren't able to get access to that. We hear about affordable housing all the time. We need to build more affordable rental housing. We need more affordable home ownership. And we need a public bank to help Black-owned businesses and homeowners, or people who want to become homeowners, to get access to capital.
I'm glad this is a perfect transition to the next topic, which is affordable housing and property taxes and home ownership. So you've gone on record opposing Kathy Hochul's plan to force ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units, which has been removed from her budget proposal recently. So can you share a little about the comprehensive multi-billion-dollar plan to build affordable homes and apartments throughout the state.
Okay, so affordable housing is not one size fits all. Okay, you got to start out with NYCHA housing. Okay, you got 500,000 people living in public housing. That's a big number. Okay, there's 8.5 million people in New York City. 500,000 people live in NYCHA housing. I've toured a lot of NYCHA housing developments. There are apartments that are burned out for a year, 3 years, 5 years, and they're just sitting there vacant after all that time. There was a story in the news the other night about a woman who died during COVID, and the workers were outside, working on the outside of the building. They found her body 2 years later. They found her skeleton. How is that possible? So as a first step, we have to save NYCHA housing. And NYCHA housing was supposed to be a transition to home ownership. We have 25,000 families in NYCHA housing that make over $100,000 a year. Why can't we figure out a way for those folks to own units so that they have a piece of their own pie so they can create generational wealth? Secondly, is we have to create public-private partnerships to build more affordable housing. I'm not against developers making money to build housing, but the concern has been that they're making too much money, that it's a giveaway to the developers. Okay, I agree with that. Let's cap the rate of return that a developer can make. You can only make 6%, 7%, 8%, maybe 9% on your money. I think the developers would still flock towards that because the people that invest in these big multifamily housing units are usually insurance funds and pension funds, and they'd be ecstatic to get a 7%, 8% return in their money. So that's what, so they're about to let, Kathy Hochul is about to let 421A expire. She should have replaced 421A with a better affordable housing plan that capped the rate of return for developers. But without the private sector, you're not going to be able to create affordable housing.
So one of the things that's unique, before we transition to the next topic about home ownership here in Southeast Queens, is there are many basement apartments. And one of the things that we realized during the last big storm that we had 7 residents from Queens pass away in their basements that were flooded. As governor, is this something that you would approve for people, or change the zoning law in a way where people can live in basement apartments?
As governor, I would not do it as governor because it should be local control, not Hochul control. It should be that the community boards and the city government decides what happens in particular communities. It can't be that it's one size fits all from the state level. Should we provide incentives to create accessory dwelling units? Should we provide incentives to create transit-oriented development? Should we provide incentives for people that want to do that? Yes, but we can't overrule what the local people want. If the local community, when she came out with that ADU proposal where it was mandated by the state that every municipality had to allow accessory dwelling units, people in Queens, including Southeast Queens, were against that because they don't want to change the character of their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. They like their single-family neighborhoods. They don't want to change the whole neighborhood into 2 and 3 family houses. They want to be able to continue to have the quality of life that they have in their neighborhoods. So it can't be one size fits all for every single neighborhood throughout the state. Now, I'm in favor of going up around the train stations and building multifamily and building more rental and more affordable housing. I'm in favor. I don't know how I feel about basement apartments, quite frankly, because it's dangerous. And that flooding that took place, you can't really protect against that. And you put people in basement apartments, you're putting a lot of people at risk. So I don't know about legalizing that unless you can put safety controls in place. The streets of New York City were designed to handle a 1 inch per hour flood. There was a couple of years ago, they increased it to 1.5 inches. Some people are talking about increasing it to like 2 inches. That storm was 7 inches within 1 hour, that one storm. And now we may have more storms like that in the future. The streets can't handle it. We can't fix the sewers. We can't fix we got to figure out how to do resiliency. Putting people living in basement apartments is not necessarily a safe thing to do if we're going to have that type of flooding in the future. So we got to balance this thing. But whatever we do, there's some people say, yes, we got to do it. Yes, we got to do it. Yes, we got to do it. And the other people say, no, I don't want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. No, no. Let's have public hearings. And let's have the local communities debate this and decide what is best, what is safest, what is affordable, but what is going to be right for the quality of life for people who live in that neighborhood.
And before I hand it over to my co-host, if you want to have any follow-up things, please type your comments in the chat. We definitely want to make this as interactive as possible. I was going to go next into public safety and gun violence, but I wanted to give you space if you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to share a couple of comments that are coming online. You made really good points about NYCHA, and so right now online we're hearing, NYCHA is often forgotten in this discussion. Basement apartments are illegal. Let's talk about it. Hello and shout out to Roz.
Hey, Roz.
Yes. So far so good. You're well liked, and I believe.
Well, if you
Tom-
like me, I need you to tell your friends and get vote in the primary, because the early voting has started and election day is on Tuesday, June 28th. If you don't like me, just keep it to yourself.
And there's a pending honorary black since his mother went to Jackson. So
Yeah, I like that. Honorary black.
Okay.
I'm Suozzi.
So I'll let you continue on.
Yeah. So next, you spoke about public safety in the beginning of at the beginning of this. So in New York City, shootings have doubled and homicides have increased over 50%. On a personal note, I had a friend of mine who was murdered on Springfield Boulevard, which is not too far from downtown. Blocks away from the Federated Blocks of Lawrence and Believe Me and Get Together. And he was viciously shot 15 times. So, if elected governor, what steps would you take to keep New Yorkers safe? And can you share with us your vision for public safety and how it relates to crime intervention and prevention? And also, I wanted to add a little caveat to this. Today, the Supreme Court struck down a new New York State law requiring applicants for licenses to carry guns outside their homes to have proper clause to do so. Do you agree with the Supreme Court's decision?
No.
And if elected governor, how would you respond?
I'm absolutely opposed to what the Supreme Court did today. And I want to point out that Kathy Hochul, when she was in Congress, she voted with the NRA, she was endorsed by the NRA, she took money from the NRA, and she voted to permit concealed carry. She voted with the Republicans. So I just want to point that out. I have an F rating from the NRA. She had an A rating from the NRA. Now she's changed her tune, but I mean, just the fact that she could even do that back in those days. I have a 15-point crime intervention and prevention plan. Intervention is a lot of stuff that the mayor's talking about, okay? About giving judges the discretion to consider dangerousness, about setting up precision policing, using intelligence. We know who the people who have the guns are, for the most part. We know who the gang members are. We have to figure out how to stop them from pulling the trigger with, violence interrupters like former gang members that try and help, know what's going on the street and help kids not to get involved in gangs, but also communicate with the cops as to what's going on. But then there's long-term stuff we need to do for prevention. It's an intervention, things to do to make people safe right now, but long-term prevention as well, which is the schools. As I said before, 75% of people in jail have a drug, alcohol, mental health problem. 50% of the people in jail have a learning disability. We have got to bring all of our health and human services, billions of dollars, federally funded, state funded, locally funded, not-for-profits, tons of them, and bring them into our schools to help kids at a young age so that their little problems don't become the big problems that cause the rest of the problems in society, including crime. And Bishop Desmond Tutu used to say, we spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. Let's go upstream and stop them from falling in the river in the first place. We have to prevent kids from going off the rails so that they can have a good life and they can have an opportunity to succeed. If they don't succeed in school, they don't have a shot at making it the rest of life. So that's long term. You've got to do short term stuff as well. I endorsed Mayor Adams very early on. I raised money for him. I campaigned for him.
He wanted you to be part of his administration.
He wanted me to be a deputy mayor, right? Because he knows I know how to run things. I said, I'm not going to be a deputy mayor. I'm running for governor. I can do more to help you and the city if I'm the governor. But he was a perfect messenger as a black man who was a member of the New York City Police Department, who rose to high levels, who fought for racial justice, but also said, we have to have law enforcement. You have to do both. It can't be just, hey, let's fight for justice, or just, let's do law enforcement, lock everybody up. It's a balance between the two. We've got to do a much better job to fix the systemic inequities that black and brown people have been subjected to by law enforcement. But we also have to make sure people are safe, because black and brown people are the people that are the victims of most violent crime.
Correct. And is there any comments from the chat that any comments?
So a question came up to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the 15-point intervention and prevention plan, and then there was a follow-up question: what is your exact plan to fund after-school and mentoring programs?
So let me take the second one first, okay?
All right.
the after school and mentoring. And I want a during school too. And the idea is to take these existing programs. We have so many programs. You know so many programs. You know some. We all know so many programs.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all designed for the most part to deal with adults when they're at the end of their rope and they're coming in to get assistance, whether it's a welfare check or food stamps or heat assistance or a housing voucher or something. And you got to do that stuff. But so much is focused on when it's too late. We have to do preventative to stop small problems from becoming big problems. And we have to change our mindset towards helping children because the teachers are overwhelmed. The school administrators are overwhelmed. The school psychologists and school social workers are overwhelmed. We already spend more per student than any state in the United States of America. We got the highest taxes in America. We can't just spend more money. We got to change the mindset of taking our existing programs, where you got one silo over here, which is school, another silo over here is health and human services, another silo over here, which is law enforcement, and we got to break down the barriers and get everybody working together to say, what can we do to help our kids so they don't end up going off the skids? And we have to remember that 66% of New Yorkers do not graduate from college. And we treat people who don't go to college like second-class citizens. We should be giving people the opportunity to get skills training to become a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician or a computer programmer or a quality control specialist or a radio freak, whatever the job is. We can make good money, but you got to get skills training. You don't have to go to college necessarily. You just need to be trained to get skills. And you should be able to, the more you learn, the more you earn. And it should be you can earn while you learn, which is what the idea of an apprenticeship program is. So I didn't answer your first question, which is more diving deeper on the 15-point plan.
Yes.
So it's like 5 points are this intervention, 5 points are getting the guns off the street, and 5 points are prevention, the long-term stuff. Part of the intervention stuff is, as I said before, giving judges the discretion to consider dangerousness, but also mental health. You know, I don't know, if, it's not like this around here, I'm sure, but in New York City, there's places all over where there are homeless people that obviously have mental illness, that are sleeping on the subways, that are walking on the streets, that are confronting people on the streets. Now, if you, let me say this, there's 18.5 million people in New York State. Of the 18.5 million, 1.5 million people have a severe mental illness. I'm not talking about like anxiety. I'm talking about like severe, like schizophrenia, bipolar, severe depression. If they don't take their medication and they're sleeping outside and it's 20 degrees out, and they got a big sore on their leg and they're muttering to themselves and confronting people on the street, that person's a danger to themselves and a danger to others. And we have to get them off the streets and get them to take their medication, even if they're saying, I don't want to do it, and get the support services they need. We have no comprehensive mental health program. We deinstitutionalized all these people back in the 70s, and we never replaced it with a comprehensive system. If there's one thing I know how to do, I'm trained as a CPA, an attorney, I was a mayor for 8 years, I was a county executive for 8 years, I was in Congress for 5.5 years. I know how to run things. I know how to get stuff done. We need a comprehensive plan for mental health. We need a comprehensive plan for crime. We need a comprehensive plan for our kids in the schools. This is the stuff that I'm passionate about, that I want to do to try and help people, because I have a heart for the people, which is not enough by itself, but I also have the skills to get the job done.
Thank you for that. I think
If we could just turn up the volume, because everyone wants to hear everyone, so we just have to speak up.
all right.
Oh, they say they can't hear me?
They can hear you, but we can all just
All right.
turn up a little bit more.
All right. All right. So we spoke about, you touched on education a little bit. I think this is a very touchy issue here in Southeast Queens. So the cost, so New York now spends $30,000 per K-12 student, making it the most expensive public education system in the country. Yet some parents in our district do not feel that the return on their investment is present.
It's not.
So according to you, Tom, troubled, underperforming schools dot the landscape of our state and continually fail to respond to the real needs of school children, especially those most in need. So I got a couple of questions here. I think the first one
Often
is,
black and brown, too.
correct. First question is, can you share with us your vision for education in New York State? And then I have some follow-up.
Okay, there's a lot of pieces to it. A big piece is the part that I've been talking about already, which is bringing these health and human services into the school. If we can, the problems in a lot of troubled schools is not academic, it's related to health and human services. Kids are having problems. You go to any kindergarten school, okay? Every kid is happy. They're painting, they're playing, they're doing clay, they're singing songs. Everybody's bright-eyed and everybody's so happy, so great. You go back to that same school in 5th grade, it's like you see these kids with hardened faces, and they're being disrespectful, or they're falling asleep in class, or they're getting in fights. What happened? The problems of life start to emerge at a very young age. 3rd grade test scores not that different from good school districts and troubled school districts. But by 8th grade, the kids in the good school districts are skyrocketing. The kids in the at-risk school districts are falling off the face of the earth. We got to get those services to those kids at those young ages. That's number one. I've talked about that a lot already.
Yes, the second question that we had is, how do you feel about charter school expansion?
Well,
Would you?
right now there's 460 charter schools are allowed in New York State, but there's a subcap in New York City of 200 and something. We've hit that cap. There's no room for more charter schools in New York City, but there's like 90 schools that are permitted under the overall cap that are not being used in the rest of the state. I think we should lift the subcap and take some of these charter school permits in other parts of the state and allow them to come into New York City.
Thank you for that.
And we should hold poor performing charter schools accountable.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit more about the no wrong door concept. I was reading through your plan.
No wrong door is something I set up when I was Nassau County Executive. I took 8 agencies: social services, health, mental health, veterans, seniors, youth, physically challenged, drug and alcohol. 8 agencies. They were in 5 separate buildings. They had no relationship to each other at all. Under no wrong door, we said, if you show up in the front door, I'm going to put all these operations in one building. You show up at the front door, you're coming for a welfare check or a Medicaid application or some sort of help. We want to find out what's going on in your life. What brought you to this point? Is there a mental health problem? Because we got services for that. Is there a physical disability? Are you a veteran? Do you have post-traumatic stress disorder? What services do we have existing that we can bring them to bear to actually help solve the problem in your life? Because that will not only make your life better, it'll actually save us money in the process. So I always give the example of a guy wandering around the train station. The cops pick him up. Usually he would get warehoused in a homeless hotel. So we say, okay, no wrong door, case of the week. Let's find out. Let's interview the guy. Turns out his wife just died. He's severely depressed. Okay, mental health counseling. Let's get a mental health counselor. Mental health counselor goes to talk to him. He's a Korean War combat veteran who had post-traumatic stress disorder that was never diagnosed from the 50s. So we're like, homeless, senior citizen, mentally ill, and a veteran. Ding, 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 ding. Like every service we provide, we've got something there. It's already done in society already. It's just they're not coordinated. Mm-hmm. So instead of warehousing him in some homeless hotel, we give him a Section 8 or a housing choice voucher, set him up nearby an existing senior citizen center so he could go there for lunch every day for an inexpensive lunch and socialize with other senior citizens. And we got a mental health counseling. And it was paid for by the federal government because he was a veteran. So it was like we helped this guy and we saved money in the process. Mm-hmm. So things like this are doable if we learn how to run things better. That's why it matters. Most politicians don't know how to run anything. They're lawyers who make good speeches. It's not enough. You got to be able to.
Did you hear that? Repeat that again.
You got to do more than just make a speech. You got to do more than just pass a law. You got to be able to implement the law and run things properly.
Thank you so much. You want to? I guess, is there any comments from the chat?
Again, thanks to Leah Fontaine of Best of Be in Good Health.
Be in Good Health. Come on, come
yeah,
face on.
Yeah. There were some highlights about speaking about the trade.
Wait, she's very shy. Let her literally show her face. Stick your face.
Say hi, Leah.
Hi, everybody.
We're having a good time. Juice bar, salads, great place to be.
And lobster rolls and tasty lemonade.
Support local business.
Thank you.
Trade schools seem to be appreciated. Some people view that, that was the worst thing that happened to some of our schools, that trade school.
We got rid of them.
Trade opportunities.
So when I was going to school, and I'm much older than you guys are, but when I was going to school, people thought, oh, BOCES, that's, what are you going to BOCES for? And we got rid of it. And we just push college. We should push college. But not 66% of New Yorkers, 60% of Americans don't go to college. Mm-hmm. So we can't write people off that aren't going to college. Mm-hmm. How many people do we hear about? We can't afford a plumber. We can't afford an electrician. We can't afford a carpenter. We need those people. We need truck drivers. We need all these jobs filled. Do stuff on TV. They're telling kids, become a chef or become a fashion expert. Well, there's not enough jobs around to go for those things. Where enough people can make a living. You guaranteed will make a good living. You'll make $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year if you're a welder, if you're an electrician, if you're a plumber. You have a great life.
So to wrap up the education issue, I think the last question that we have in the realm of education is, do you feel like we should expand specialized high schools and gifted and talented programs, knowing, let me add some context here, knowing that the low number of Black and Latino students admitted to New York City's prestigious specialized high school hasn't budged, with those students making up just under 9% of offers for next year's class, according to the Education Department data release.
So we should not get rid of the gifted and talented programs, but we should expand it, and we should set up schools that have a specific mission of gifted and talented Black and brown people, so that they have an opportunity to excel. And we have to go out of our, it's not, like I said before, it's not good enough to make a speech, okay? You say, oh, I want to do MWBE business, minority women-owned business enterprise, okay? I want to do more minority women-owned businesses. And I'm going to pass a law to say it. If your public works director is not on board with your plan, he'll say, oh, well, I couldn't find anybody qualified. I couldn't find anybody who could have the experience. You have to have people in your administration whose mission is the same. That's why when I was Nassau County Executive, for example, I hired an African-American police commissioner from the New York City Police Department. You think that was easy to do in Nassau County back in 2002? It was not easy. But he promoted Black and brown officers to the point that Keechon Sewall, who's now the commissioner of police in New York City, came out of the Nassau County Police Department, and she got promoted up in my administration and further administration, became the head of detectives. That you have to have people in those. I put the deputy county executive for economic development was a Black man. My commissioner, my deputy county executive for parks and public works was a Black man. I had a Latina health commissioner, a Latino mental health commissioner. You have to put people in power so they're at the table to make sure you implement the things that you say you want to do. So I'll bring that back to the gifted and talented programs. You have to have a specific mission of helping to incorporate Black and brown children into gifted and talented programs so that they can excel. We need more Black doctors, okay? One of the biggest problems with healthcare is cultural competency. You can have a white person and a Black person with the exact same diagnosis, the same health insurance, the same income, and the white person's results will be better than the Black person. That's not me just saying that, that's a proven fact. We don't have enough Black doctors. We don't have enough brown doctors. We have to have cultural competency, and we need to provide scholarships for people so that they can become doctors and become local doctors instead of just doing specialties because the student debt is too high. Okay, I'm talking too much, I'm sorry.
No. This conversation is really rich. We're running short on time. I mean, if you could indulge us with a little bit, because there's some really rich topics here, rich gems here. We really want to hear from you, and our folks who are watching at home really want to hear from you. The next topic is homelessness. So in recent years, homelessness in New York City has reached the highest levels since the Great Depression, since like 1930. So families entering shelters predominantly come from a few clustered zip codes in the poorest neighborhoods in New York City. However, homeless families and single adults come from every community in New York City. And I'm only using New York City because this is where we're at. So if elected governor, can you share with us your plan to address homelessness and housing instability in New York City and New York State?
Again, this is not a one-size-fits-all. I mean, there's people that just had bad luck. Somebody got in a car accident, or somebody died during COVID, or somebody lost their job, or somebody got really sick and they couldn't make the money to pay the rent, or there's just so many different things. That's why public housing is so important, quite frankly, as a transition for people when they're in a rough spot. When public housing stinks, you lose that safety net for people, where you can only pay 30% of your income to pay for your rent. If you don't have any income, you can get through, you can weather the storm. So that's been just completely misrun. This is such a big opportunity to fix this. But then there's mentally ill people that are homeless. That's a different set of problems.
Right.
And like I said before, there are people that just refuse to take their medication. There are people that refuse to get the support. We have to start doing a little more tough love. There's a thing called Kendra's Law, and we have to expand Kendra's Law, and we have to give family members, social workers, mental health experts, police officers, the power to say, this person is a danger to themselves and others. They must get the treatment that they need, even when they say they don't want to. That's a tough thing. You have to have procedures and processes in place, but it's gone way too far. When I was in law school, I started a volunteer program at my law school. I used to sleep at a homeless shelter to help supervise it on, not every night, but on occasion. I used to work at the soup kitchen. I mean, this was a big problem back in the 80s when I was in law school. I was living in Manhattan from 84 to 91. It's coming back with a vengeance now. And we have to, again, have a comprehensive plan. And to do that, we need to bring together all the stakeholders, because the issues of homelessness, the issues of mental health, the issues of education, the issues of housing, and the issues of crime are all interrelated. It's not like a separate thing. And if there's one thing I'm good at doing, is I could bring together meetings of 100 people, literally 100 people, and say, listen, we all want the same things. We don't want crime. We don't want homelessness. We don't want whatever it may be. What can we do to develop a plan to drive the ball home to solve these problems? And then you have to implement.
The next topic I want to get into, and I think this is something that's really sensitive, it's in relation to health and mental health. And I want to be very targeted about the health issues. So non-Hispanic Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. So can you talk to me about what your vision and plan is for this specific population? Because basically the data shows us that Black women are dying at a higher rate than any other.
Well, we have a lot of legislation in Congress to address Black maternal health. But there's stuff we have to do at the local level as well. And I think this cultural competency issue I talked about before is very important. For example, most white people have never heard of a doula. They don't even know what that is. And you know what that is, right? Yeah. And so, we just have to do a better job with preventative maternal care, so that mothers who are pregnant, or mothers-to-be who are pregnant, get the proper checkups and treatment that they need all throughout their pregnancy. They take the right vitamins, they get the right ultrasound, and they get the proper food, and they're not drinking, they're not smoking. Different things that we have to do. But we need culturally competent people that can educate mothers on these issues.
So would you expand? So recently Eric Adams announced the doula and midwifery initiatives, part of the city's, part of his comprehensive plan. Would you expand on those, and would you work with the mayor to expand the doula initiatives?
Well, as far as the mayor goes, I'll work with him on everything. We have a great relationship. As you said before, he was asking me to be his deputy mayor. As far as that, yeah, I would love to do that. What I would want to do is bring the community together to figure out what the community wants to see happen.
And overall, mental health conditions occur in Black and African American people in America at about the same or less frequency than their white counterparts. So what's your mental health plan? Like, can you talk to me a little bit about specifically how your mental health plan can really help Black folks?
Well, first, we have to do what I've been talking about this whole conversation about bringing that help into schools, so that the little problems don't become big problems, because you can identify these problems early on in life, and they can be managed if they're addressed early on in life. Cultural competency is also a very big part of that, to understand what's going on with young people and what's emerging as mental health issues. We have to talk about mental health much more openly. 1 out of 5 people have a mental health issue. A lot of them are low-level anxiety issues, but then, there's people that are very, very severely affected by things like anxiety. And then there's very severe problems as well. It's always kind of been something people didn't want to talk about. And a lot of drug and alcohol problems are people self-medicating themselves because they got a mental health problem. So we have to learn how to talk about, all these kids right now, they're freaking out from COVID. How many children do you see outside wearing their masks and they're afraid to take their masks off? Outside in the middle of summer, and they're still wearing their masks. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety out there. We have to talk about this stuff, and we have to talk about it openly with people. And dealing with mental health requires honest, blunt conversations, because mental health disease is a disease. You're not embarrassed to talk about the fact that you got bronchitis or that you got cancer. You want to get treatment. We have to treat the diseases of mental health and often drug addiction and alcoholism like what they are, which is our diseases.
I want to do a time check, and I just want to see if we have any more comments from the chat that came in around some of the stuff that we were talking.
Not at this moment.
Okay.
Continue on to the next.
Yeah, the next topic that I want to get into, since we're talking about health, is senior care. I think a lot of times when we talk about initiatives and different things that are happening in the community, seniors are the forgotten population in terms of housing, services, and different things. as governor, can you tell me a little bit more about what you would do to really help seniors? Because a lot of them, some can't afford rent, some are being evicted, and I just really want to hear that, because I honestly, whenever I talk to or interview elected officials, that seems to be like a forgotten. And as a young person, as a young professional, we want to make sure that the individuals who are more seasoned in our community are taken care of.
I grew up in a house, all 4 of my grandparents lived there. 3 of them were very sick. My mom was a nurse, helped take care. We all helped take care of it. My grandmother was the bathroom, you can imagine what I was like as a teenager. And my mom and dad didn't want to see us have to take care of them the way they took care of their parents, and so they got long-term care insurance. And they died at 95 and 93 years old. They died at home, and they had home health care aides. People can't afford long-term care insurance anymore. It's too expensive. It's way too expensive. I have a bill in Congress to actually try and fix that. It's not going to pass, but it's a great idea, but it's not going to happen. So we've got to try and look at our housing issues. Like, say, for example, NYCHA housing again, okay? Mm-hmm. It's really tough to put a lot of poor people all in the exact same location. It just becomes like a ghetto. And you got people trying to go to work every day, and they're trying their best, and they're trying to raise their families, and the kids are working hard. And down the hall, you got a bunch of teenagers hanging out late at night, smoking reefer in the hallway and blaring music. I mean, it's very hard to live in that environment. But you can put a lot of senior citizens in one location like that. And if you put senior citizens together, it's often going to be a very supportive environment. But we should be providing support services to those seniors in that NYCHA housing so that they can age in place. It becomes almost like an assisted living type of place, but it's for low-income people in public housing. Take the existing services we have, bring them into NYCHA housing.
I have a question in reference to this topic, because a lot of us millennials, we plan to take care of our parents later on. And one thing that I find about medical and health insurance is you could put your kid on your insurance, but I can't put my parent.
Yeah.
So as governor, can you talk to us a little bit? Would you be willing to sign maybe an executive order? I don't know if that makes sense.
I can't fix that one. That's the insurance.
But is it possible for young people to put their parents as dependents so they can take advantage of medical insurance? So you see something.
I don't have a good answer for that, but that's something to think about. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know that we can do that. But senior citizens have access to Medicare. The Part B and stuff that they have to buy now is getting more too expensive. Prescription drugs are getting too expensive. There's some stuff we can do in Washington. I can't believe we can't get done, but the drug companies are so powerful.
Yeah,
but
a lot of senior citizens are on fixed incomes and they can barely make it day to day.
House rich
and if I'm a young professional and I have a good job and I want to take care of my parents, I should be able to
save towards that.
Well, let me just tell you a big problem. You say a lot of millennials want to take care of their parents. In the old days, parents had a lot more children, and they all lived in the same neighborhood. So the kids were there to take care of their parents. Now parents have much smaller families, so there's less people to take care of them. People are living longer, so there's less people to take care of them as they get older. And a lot of people move out of their old neighborhood and they move to somewhere else in the country. So how many times you hear a story about somebody who's living in some other state, like, oh, my mom's sick, I gotta go back home and take care of my mom. That's a big problem that exists in our society. And the answer can't be that everybody's gonna go to nursing homes, because it's not only inhumane, the system can't afford it and can't bear the system. So we have to set up home health care where children can take care of their parents, or where you can hire people to take care of your parents, but you get help from the government to do it.
Okay, so a question came up, could you share a little bit about your climate change plan as governor and how you hope to ensure that residents in Southeast Queens are not left behind, considering we're home to our international airports and development of both JFK and LaGuardia?
So I was the New York State Environmentalist of the Year for all of New York State by the New York League of Conservation Voters. Al Gore gave me an award when I was mayor of Glen Cove for cleaning up polluted properties. I got all kinds of awards throughout my career. I don't agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on a lot of issues, but I support the Green New Deal and stuff at the federal level. We must address climate change. Short term, we got to do stuff about resiliency, because there's going to be a lot more storms coming. We talked before about the 7 inches of rain in an hour. That's a big problem. People are getting flooded. But with long term, we got to address climate change overall and get off of fossil fuels. The problem is we can't just do it just New York ourselves, because the way we're doing it now, we're seeing our utility rates keep on creeping up, and people can't afford to live here. So we got to use our brains and transition away from fossil fuels in a way that doesn't break the bank. In Congress, I've authored legislation regarding solar tax credits, geothermal tax credits, all kinds of stuff. I'm on all kinds of green legislation. But implementing that is a tough challenge, that it doesn't break the bank in the process, because we already have the highest taxes in America. Our utility rates are going through the roof. People can't afford to pay their gas prices. So we got to balance our zeal to protect the environment, which I have, with the need for people to be able to afford to live here.
So we're getting close to us wrapping up. There's only two more topics after this. If you don't mind, we would like to indulge you. I think this is a topic that's really sensitive, and it's in relation to public safety. Can you share with me a little bit about your plan for formerly incarcerated individuals coming home?
People need a second chance. I mean, I've sponsored legislation, co-sponsored legislation in Congress that we passed bipartisan. We need to do more of that stuff. Now, I don't like the bill that they just had in Albany called the Clean Slate, which is like you could have, if you were a murderer, you could get that expunged from your record after 7 years, I think it was. I don't like that idea. And I don't like the idea that if you were a sex offender, you don't have to report that to your employer if you're going to become like a child care worker or a teacher or something like that. So we have to balance this stuff. I believe in second chances, especially people who were arrested for low-level crimes in a system that was very unfair for a long time. How can it be that people were arrested for these marijuana charges and things like that, and now we're legalizing marijuana, and these other people are still stuck with this on the record? That doesn't make sense at all. So we have to balance the desire to give people second chances, which is a reasonable, good thing to do, with we still have to protect against people that are a danger to society. So that requires a lot of effort and a lot of time to find that good balance.
Yeah, so a lot of things are relational, as we've had during this conversation. So I guess the next topic that I want to discuss is the economy, the access to jobs for this specific population. Can you share with us, your economy recovery vision for New York State?
We hear all the time about all these jobs that aren't filled. I mean, we don't have enough nurses. Nursing's a great job. We don't have enough truck drivers. Now that's a tough job, and I'm not going to recommend that for you. That's a tough job. You got to travel all the time, be on the road. But you make a lot of money. We need more welders and carpenters and electricians. We got to get people to do those jobs. So we have to try and give training available through apprenticeship programs to get the jobs. I want to take the employees, potential employees, who say, I want to get a job where I can make enough money. Then I want to get the employers who say, I need 5 of these type, or I need 10 of these type, or I need 15 of those type. And then I want to take all these programs we have in community colleges and training programs and things be fun, but we have to link them all together with a database. So someone can go online and say, I want to make $100,000 a year. What can I do? Ding, 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 ding. Here's 10 employers looking for that type of work. 10 people looking for that type of employee. And then the other guys say, okay, we can train you. We can train 5 people to do that. Just sign up here and we'll train you to do it. We have all the pieces. It just needs to be run better than it is.
Last issue, and then if you could close out for us.
Let me just say one thing with that. We've been filling a lot of these jobs with immigrants over the years, and I'm pro-immigrant. My father was an immigrant. But we got to get our American, homegrown, black and brown people, and white people too, that don't have a good wage or a good living. We got to train them to get these jobs. It's doable. It's just hasn't been done because we got the employee piece here, we got the employer piece over here, and we got the education piece over here. We got to put them together. Correct. It's all common. I'm a common sense Democrat. These are common sense things that we have to implement.
Last topic that I'm going to put up that I think is extremely important, that a lot of our constituency in Black really care about, is student loan forgiveness. We've been seeing people in Washington duck and dive around this issue. So in New York State, for example, the average student debt load is above $30,000. Black students face greater hurdles when it comes to financing their college education and repaying their student loans. Black students are more likely to borrow more, struggle with repayment, and default on their student loans than their peers. So as governor, can you see yourself embracing a plan that forgives the student loan debt of just New York State?
It's about the money. I mean, it's like we already have the highest taxes in America, Maybe if Kathy Hochul hadn't given $1 billion away to the Buffalo Bills, she could have used some of that for student loan forgiveness instead. That was the biggest taxpayer giveaway in the history of New York State. I would support it at the federal level. I want the federal government to pick up more of these burdens because we can't just keep on trying to do everything in New York because we already have the highest taxes in America and people are leaving. So we just don't have the money to do all these things. I also want to look at the fairness question. You have somebody who worked hard and who was very careful about not going to the top school. They just wanted to make sure that they didn't have a bunch of student debt. And somebody else said, I'm going to go borrow all the money, and this person doesn't get the benefit, and this person gets the big benefit. So we got to balance it. I'll support what the president wants to try and do, which is to forgive, I think, $10,000, which I think makes sense.
So I wanted to thank you so much for coming to the heart of Lawrenton. Shout out to Ms. Fontaine for creating this wonderful space and the entire staff. To everybody at home, thank you so much for watching. But you're gonna.
Can I say one last thing?
Sure.
Okay, so listen.
This is up to you. Like, give us your pitch.
I need folks to vote.
Next week.
Okay, early voting has started already. You can find your early voting location on my website, Suozzi for NY. If you want to go to SUOZZI for NY. I'm a proven executive, trained as a CPA, an attorney, a mayor, county executive, Congress member. I know how to get stuff done in government. I know how to lay out a vision, and I know how to drive the ball and hold people accountable to get there. Number two, I'm a common sense Democrat. I'm sick of the far left. I'm sick of the crazy right. Let's just work together to help people, to get things done, to solve problems, and make people's lives better. And my agenda is very clear. Kathy Hope has been in office for 10 months. I don't know what she's running on. I don't know what her agenda is. My agenda is reduce crime, cut taxes and make New York more affordable, help the kids in our troubled schools, and clean up the corruption in New York State. If you like what I'm saying, spread it around, please. Please vote. If you don't like what I'm saying, just forget about the election day.
All right. With that said,
Tom.
thank you all so much for tuning in.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Tom.
Thank you.
Coming to Southeast
Appreciate
Queens,
you.
and thank you to the owners.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate you. Bye.
Until next time.
Okay.
That was
Marcy then does another little black.
I'm
thing.
exhausted.
Awesome. Yeah, that's why. And great conversation. Yeah, great conversation.
Any negative stuff?